Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia.
God called you through the Gospels to obtain the glorification of Kyrios Jesus Christ.
Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia.
May Christ be with you.
And also with you.
A reading from the Good News according to John.
Glory to you, O Christ.
There was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, was there. Jesus and his disciples likewise had been invited to the celebration. At a certain point, the wine ran out, and Jesus' mother told him, "They have no wine." Jesus replied, "Mother, what does that have to do with me? My hour is not yet come." She instructed those waiting on tables, "Do whatever he tells you." As prescribed for the Jewish ceremonial washings, there were 6 stone jars of water on hand, each one holding between 15 and 25 gallons. "Fill those jars with water," Jesus said, and the servers filled them to the brim. "Now," said Jesus, "draw some out and take it to the steward." They did as they were instructed. The steward tasted the water, which had become wine, without knowing where it had come from. The only ones who knew were those who were waiting on tables, because they had drawn the water. The one in charge called the bride and groom over and remarked, "People usually serve the best wine first. Then, when the guests have been drinking a while, a lesser vintage is served. What you have done is keep the choice wine until now." Jesus performed this first of his signs at Cana in Galilee. In this way, he revealed his glory, and the disciples believed in him. This is the good news of salvation.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Rejected, reclaimed, renamed, repurposed. I'm going to review what we heard in a slightly different order to show what I'm getting. Psalm 118, "I was pressed about to fall, but our God came to my help. Shouts of joy and safety ring. The stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone." Then you look at Isaiah 62. "You will have a new name that the mouth of the Most High shall bestow. No longer named forsaken or desolate, but delight. You will be a garland of beauty in God's hands, a solemn crown worn by your God." And God will not rest until that's true. In John, the water for purification becomes the wine of rejoicing. And then in 1 Corinthians, each person is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. It's one and the same Spirit who produces all these gifts and distributes them at will. John Acuff put it this way: God found Gideon in a hole. He found Joseph in prison. He found Daniel in a lion's den. He has a curious habit of showing up in the midst of trouble, not its absence. Where the world sees failure, God sees future. Next time you feel unqualified to be used by God, remember this: he tends to recruit from the pit, not the pedestal. I'll go farther. Adam the blamer, Cain the murderer, Noah the drunkard who cursed his son, Abram the liar, Moses, "Not me, Lord, I have anger issues, besides which I disowned that whole family." Aaron, "Not me, Lord, I stutter." Gideon, least of the families of the half-tribe of Manasseh. Saul, least of the families of the youngest tribe of Benjamin. David, little boy left behind and too small to put in armor. Oh, and he sent Uzziah to go die so that he could get Bathsheba. Solomon, prideful and grabby. A large number of depressive prophets. Peter, the rockhead. Paul, whose very letters show his shouty side. And us. Each and every one of us. Rachel Held Evans said, the folks you're shutting out of the church today will be leading it tomorrow. That's how the Spirit works. The future's in the margins. Usually making good trouble and marching forward on that heavenly road. The church itself, herself, ourselves in the margins, that's our history. We weren't the in crowd until Constantine needed us. Out of the weak, stuttering, least of the least, in our raw flaws and maybe some humility, God can find someone they can work with. I've heard a lot of guesses about why, but right now, I want to talk about the how. Rejected, reclaimed, renamed, repurposed. New realizations come in the wake of feeling rejected that open us up, sometimes make us desperate for something new. At the least, we sure don't feel like we got much to lose. We're already sitting in the rubble. We're already the least, the odd one out, the failure or sinner or other. Rejected means that maybe, just maybe, we're ready to listen. Rejected, reclaimed, renamed, repurposed. It's important that we are actually ready to listen in order to hear the first essential message, that we are claimed. Even if we've somehow gotten unclaimed, which I frankly doubt, we've somehow walked away and rejected God in some way that God found binding, even then, we are reclaimed as soon as we are ready to listen. Belonging, part of the fam, part of the plan. Rejected, reclaimed, renamed, repurposed. Now we're on renamed. We are no longer to call ourselves, think of ourselves, or answer to names like forsaken, or desolate, or say loser, or not good enough. You are not to call yourself by those names. Ever. You have new names. Names like delight, beauty, crown, beloved. Sometimes those new names are lessons in themselves. Asked for, Saul, became humble, Paul. Probably need the reminder. Listener, Simon, became rock, Peter. But why didn't God rename War God's own, Mark? Maybe because this is a very different kind of warfare for a very different kind of kingdom, and the name was still appropriate. But what I'm getting at today is asking you to seek to listen for what your real name is. Your name before God. You've been reclaimed, renamed, repurposed. This I know. Do you know your name and purpose? How did you find out what you did know of it? How could you advise us to listen for it? Rejected, reclaimed, renamed, repurposed. Now we're at repurposed. If Mark's name was somehow apt for his repurposing, just as Paul needed to be humble as a former persecutor and still firebrand, and Peter needed to remember to become a rock to anchor the church in someone who could be persuaded and could remember to listen to dreams. Otherwise, we'd all be Essenes. So back to us, we're in this year of Jubilee, a still pandemic Jubilee. We were laughing about the fact that on the Jewish calendar, it's actually the small Sabbath one. And that Sabbath, when we've been feeling follow for so long, is a little weird. The Pope has just declared that the theme of this Jubilee year, and maybe he's hoping that the church will rename itself, is Pilgrims of Hope. Now that got this Peregrino's attention. I'm just a little. In fact, I needed just that vibe so much this last year, I went on a virtual Camino de Santiago. And I want to share a poem about pilgrimage life by Jan Richardson. And again, be thinking about renamed and repurposed here. If you could see the journey whole, you might never undertake it, might never dare take the first step that propels you from the place you have known toward the place you know not. Call it one of the mercies of the road, that we see it only by stages as it opens up before us, as it comes into our keeping step by single step. There's nothing for it but to go, and by our going take the vows the pilgrim takes, to be faithful to the next step, to rely on more than the map, to heed the signposts of intuition and dream, to follow the star that only you will recognize, to keep an open eye for the wonders that attend the path, to press on beyond distractions, beyond fatigue, beyond what would tempt you from the way. There are vows that only you will know, the secret promises for your particular path, and the new ones you will need to make when the road is revealed by turns you could not have foreseen. Keep them, break them, make them again. Each promise becomes part of the path. Each choice creates the road that will take you to the place where, at last, you will kneel to offer the gift most needed, the gift that only you can give, before turning to go home by another way. You have been reclaimed, renamed, repurposed. This I know. Listen for your name, your purpose. And please share, how did you learn? What parts of your name and purpose you know? What advice do you have to listen? Maybe what you're going to do about it. Tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We know what he did about it.